All right, I think we're about ready to begin. So I'm going to ask our panelists to turn on their cameras if they're ready. All righty, so my name is Jessica Welch. I'm the Director of Communications for the Division of Small Business. It looks like we have a great turnout today. We have more than 100 attendees for this EDGE webinar. So I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping measures, and then I'm going to turn it over to our director, Jordan Schulteis, who will be really giving the meat of the presentation today and all of the details about the EDGE program. So first off, I just wanted to remind everyone that we are on a webinar through Zoom. So that's why you won't see a mute button or an unmute button if you're an attendee. If you have a question as Jordan is going through the presentation, please put it in the Q&A section down at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. If you have questions that are directly related to your business, we would ask that you would reach out to us separately from the webinar. You can send us an email to business@delaware.gov, or you can give us a call at 302-739-4271 to get connected to one of our regional business managers to get questions answered about your business. And just a reminder, applications for EDGE are due by September 30th at 5 p.m. I wanted to introduce everyone who's joining us as a panelist so that you can kind of get to know who's on today. So in addition to Jordan providing some information about the EDGE program and competition, we also have Joy Hunt with Elite Feet. They were a winner in our last round. Joy's business is located in Middletown. It's a running shoe store up in Middletown. They can custom fit customers for running shoes and different shoes and things like that. And they use their $25,000 EDGE funding to purchase a mobile shoe store. Basically, they're going to take their shoes on the road to 5Ks and different events like that. So those are the kinds of ideas that we get from our EDGE winners and EDGE businesses. Also joining us is our Deputy Director, Regina Mitchell. We also have several business managers throughout the state, each assigned to different areas. So David Matthey is with us. He is our Southern Newcastle County guy. Joe Zilkowski is with us. He's our Wilmington guy. And Lauren Swain is with us. She's our Sussex County business manager. We also have Laura Whistler, who's our Kent County person. She's not able to join us today, but if you're a Kent County business and you have questions, please reach out. We can get those questions to Laura. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and start the presentation. All right, so Jordan, if you're ready.
I am.
We start at the beginning. All right.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us this morning. We are really excited to be in round 4 of our EDGE grant. So it's hard to believe that this is already the 4th time around. We've had the pleasure of looking through so many of these applications, and it's always so inspiring to see, what's happening in our own backyard that maybe we don't even realize is going on. So we're excited to have this same experience this time around, hopefully with some new folks, but we also really enjoy hearing from folks from previous rounds as well that maybe didn't get all the way to the finals to the grant. So seeing those business plans improve is also immensely rewarding. So couple pictures up on your screen here of our previous EDGE rounds. Our most recent rounds were awarded. We held the finals at Painted Stave Distillery in Smyrna. It might have been the hottest day of the year, and we held it outside just to keep everything as safe as possible. But you see some of our winners there, and of course you'll hear from one of our winners, Joy Hunt, in just a little bit. Yeah, so I think we're ready for the next slide. So what are the EDGE grants? The EDGE grants are a competitive opportunity for small businesses to really kind of level the playing field against their larger, more established competitors. We have two categories that you can apply under. The first one is STEM, which is really your more scientific and research-based companies. And then we have your entrepreneurs, which are, maybe your downtown Main Street type businesses. A lot of times they have a storefront where they interact with the public, not always, but just covers a really wide spectrum of businesses there. In the STEM category, we have 5 awards that are up to $100,000 each. And in the entrepreneur category, we do 10 awards at up to $25,000 each. And those would have to be matched by the business at a 2-to-1 basis. So if, the state is putting in $1 or $2, I'm sorry, we would expect the business to match that at 1. So for the $25,000 awards in entrepreneur, it actually works out to, it's a very odd number, but it's a little bit over $8,000 that we would need to see a match in for the overall project. So this is a really competitive process, and I cannot emphasize that enough, that these are very, very, very competitive. In the last round alone, we received about 280 applications in total. So that's a lot of reading, which is why further on in the presentation, you'll see that we asked you to limit it to 20 pages. It's a very hard limit. We do not read past 20 pages. And that's the reason why, because when you multiply 280 by 20 pages, that's a lot of reading. So we want to make sure that we're giving everybody the most thorough read possible and that we're giving everybody a fair shake. So, but in the last round, we ended up with 280. So we have our office pool going about what this round looks like. And then out of that, we'll have 23 finalists. And of course, they will be split between the STEM category and the entrepreneur category. 8 of those would be in the STEM category and 15 would be in the entrepreneur category. And then you can see there that there's 15 winners, 5 in STEM and then 10 in the entrepreneurs. Next slide. So who's eligible for the EDGE grants? These are meant for newer, less established businesses. So we're looking for those that have been in business 5 years or less. I believe it's 2016. So anybody who started in 2016 is still eligible through this round. This is our last planned round for this year. So after this year, those folks from 2016 are not going to be eligible any longer. So if you fall into that category, this would be the last round that you'd be eligible to apply. You also need to have less than 10 full-time employees. If you have part-time employees at your business, 2 part-time employees would be the same equivalent as 1 full-time employee for the purposes of calculating it under the EDGE competition. If they work less than 10 hours a week or they're really seasonal and they're less than 4 months, you do not need to count them in your full-time employee count. You would also need to have your business majority located in Delaware, meaning 51% of your physical presence and your assets, your employees, all those things are located right here in Delaware. It is not required that those things be present when you apply. It just so happens that all of our winners up to this point have already been physically located in Delaware. But if you were to be located somewhere else and part of your project would be actually locating in Delaware, that would just need to be completed prior to any kind of disbursement of the grant. So just to make you all aware of that requirement. Net assets of the business would have to be less than $500,000. And the reason being is we're really trying to reach the smallest of the businesses. This is meant to give our small business folks a leg up. And if you were able to hit net assets of $500,000, you're probably a little bit better capitalized than most. So you're just, unfortunately, not the segment we're looking to target in this specific program. The final requirement here is that you have not previously received a strategic fund grant. And this is a question we actually get fairly frequently is, how do I know if I received a strategic fund grant? Strategic fund is an extremely public process. There is a public meeting hearing if you are awarded a grant from that pool of money. I promise you will remember if you have ever appeared in front of that council. So if the answer to that is no, not to worry, you're probably good to go. So let's talk about the actual proposal to be submitted. In addition to the application, I think it's like just a couple pages that are in the application. The application needs to be filled out in its entirety. So I will say that up front. One of the most common things that we see is when there's a section for ownership and you're asked to list who actually owns the company. Please do not just retype your business name and EIN number. We're looking to figure out who actually is the ultimate owner of that company. So if you have questions, and if you have questions on any of these items, please reach out to a business manager for input. The last thing we want to see is that you put so much effort into the proposal and it's well thought out, and something silly is what gets your proposal put in the decline pile. So we really want everybody to have their best chance at success here. So please ask questions if you are uncertain about anything. As far as the actual proposal goes, you're going to see that the application itself is pretty short. It's not going to ask for a whole lot more than just some basic demographic type data. And when you get to the end, it's going to give you some pretty high level categories. And it's going to say in your proposal, it should include this list of categories. When you type that proposal out, it should be Times New Roman, size 12 font, double spaced. So nothing crazy as far as formatting goes. You are limited to the 20 pages, but that does not mean that you should use size 4 font, single spaced 0.2 margins just to be able to squeeze it in everywhere. We need to reasonably be able to read it so that we can get all the good information that you're putting out there for us. Maximum of 20 pages, which includes your exhibits and your financials. This is going to be the first point I will drop this in. You're going to hear me say it multiple times because it's that important. A balance sheet and an income statement are required. We have to have both. If you send us just one and not the other, your proposal will be rejected in the first round and will actually not even be read for content. So it will be very, very difficult for us to give you feedback if we don't at least have the very basic pieces here. So first time I'll say it, won't be the last. Balance sheet and income statement have to be there. Your 20 pages is going to include all of your exhibits and all of your financials. That's another really common question that we get. Once you get all of that put together, you're going to submit everything by PDF and you're going to send it electronically to edgegrants@delaware.gov. That should all be in one single PDF. We do get some submissions where they send everything one page at a time, one email at a time. The real risk in that is we don't know that we've gotten everything. It's not always really clear. So it just makes it really difficult. And again, you've put so much time, so much effort into this proposal. Do not leave anything to chance. One nice, neat PDF and email is your best shot at making sure we get it in exactly the order that you want it to be read and that nothing gets lost in translation. So the best advice that I can give you as you're putting together your proposal is to really read the rubric. The rubrics are actually right behind the application, so everybody has them, you can see. Please be mindful about what category you're applying for. If you are in STEM, the rubric is just slightly different than what it's going to look like in the entrepreneur category. But these are really the best kind of peek into the process of how we evaluate the EDGE grants. This is actually the rubric that our team uses when they go through everything internally to take a look and say, how does this presentation and how does this proposal stack up against everybody else? So it's almost like we're telling you, here's exactly, and we are telling you, this is exactly what we are looking for. So if you use this rubric as you go through and prepare and just really make sure that you're hitting those points, you want to make sure that you're in the highest category all the way over here on the right, that, there should be no question in the reviewer's mind that, yes, this meets this requirement. So that is absolute gold as far as making sure you have what we're looking for. We're telling you this is exactly what we're looking for. So just make sure that you're taking a look at that and following it all the way through. And this is just a peek at the entrepreneur rubric. And again, these are attached right behind the application PDF. So make sure you're taking a look at these as you're preparing your proposal and going through all of that. Another big kind of little pitfall we see a lot of people hit is that they write a really great proposal. It reads well. The business idea is really intriguing. It seems well thought out. There's a pretty good just general business sense there. And the biggest thing we see is that there's just not a lot of outside data to substantiate any of that. And the way that the rubric is written, we really need that to help pull it all together. So make sure that when you're pulling this together, you're looking at those, reputable outside sources and really pulling the data from that to help tie it all together. So this is how I like to lay it out as far as structuring your proposal. There's going to be a couple of things on the rubric that we're going to need to know where is your business at? So tell us where you're at today. Who's your competition? What are you able to do today? What's your estimated market size? And again, that goes back to make sure you're using your sources so that we know what your market size is. It's not that you've estimated and said, I think there's 500 people in Dover and I think I'm going to capture 10% of them. Go out, figure out exactly how many people are in your area and go from there. So define for us where you're really at. Tell us what you need. So tell us what you're applying for the grant for. And again, this is a really competitive competition. So think about it like Shark Tank. It very specifically tell us what you would use the grant for. Maybe it's you need to buy a new piece of machinery so that you can move your output up and really compete with some of the more established businesses. Maybe you need to make cosmetic improvements inside your restaurant so that, you know, it looks more like a larger restaurant does. It runs the gamut, and it's been really interesting to hear some of the things that some of our businesses have come up with as over the duration of the program. There's definitely no one size fits all. So this is really where we're relying on you to say, this is what my business needs, because you know your business better than we do. So highlight that for us. And then also tell us where your business would go. So if you were to get exactly what you're asking for, and you provide the grant for the business, what's going to happen? What's your return on investment going to be? What's the return on investment going to be for the state? What's the community impact going to look like? And just overall, how does that change the trajectory of your business? So help us understand that. And again, make sure you're pulling in your data points to support that. That's where you're going to go back to making sure that you have really strong projections for your business, assuming the project is implemented, so that you know what's going to happen to your revenue. You know what the corresponding impact on your expenses might be. You know, hey, I'm going to have to move my storefront because of this, or this is going to take me from being home-based to having a physical brick and mortar. It's going to span quite a bit. So make sure you're addressing all of that. I think I've covered a lot of these, but we'll kind of quickly touch on these as well. I touched on the data and making sure you're substantiating this with third-party data. The more targeted you make this, the better. So I mean, if we have a floral shop in Laurel, of course we can go out and we can find the population of Laurel. We can't assume that everybody in Laurel would be our customer. So don't be afraid to drill down and say, this is who we expect to visit our floral shop, and this is how many of them are in the area that we're targeting. Maybe you're not limited just to the town that you're in. Maybe you have a draw for surrounding areas. Maybe it's a little more regional. So just really dig in. And again, there is no one size fits all here. So just make sure you're painting the story for your business in the best way possible. The other thing to think about is when we ask you to define your competition, because this is another big part of the rubric. And it goes back to the whole premise of the program. This is to give small businesses a competitive leg up, essentially, in competing with their larger, more established competitors. So on that vein, we want to know, who are your competitors? And you might have to think outside the box a little bit. We've definitely seen some proposals from businesses who are doing something really, really unique. And there might not be a direct competitor for them. They might be doing something completely novel and there's just nothing else like it. And that's okay. And that's awesome. We love to hear about those kinds of ideas. But you also need to consider that just because you are the only one doing this specific thing, there's probably a substitute out there. So make sure you're thinking through all of that. We definitely are not going to probably get very far with a proposal that says, I'm the only game in town. There is absolutely no competition. Nobody would consider anything else. I have this on a complete lock. Going back to the floral example, if you own a florist in Laurel and you say there are no other florists around, I'm it. You should also consider, what do people purchase instead of flowers for the occasions that they would send flowers? Maybe chocolates are a really good alternative, and you should think about, is there a really great candy shop in the area? Just all kinds of things like that. So don't box yourself in too much thinking that you're the only one doing what you're doing. The other thing we see a lot of people kind of maybe sugarcoat a little bit is challenges. We want to know what the challenges are in your business. You definitely have them. If not, we probably need to talk a little bit deeper about what your secrets are. The other side of that, though, you definitely have them, and that's okay. So when we read about some of the challenges you see in your business, we don't interpret that as a failure on anybody's part. It's that you clearly know your landscape and you're able to identify the obstacles that are in front of you. And that's really great. That's a good thing to know. It's hard to overcome them if you don't see them. So don't be afraid to be honest and candid about where you're at. So I'm going to ping my point again. Make sure you include an income statement and a balance sheet. We have to have both. If you are confused about what those things look like, please reach out and we can connect you with the appropriate resources to get you going in the right direction. The best applications that we have always incorporate the financial data into the proposal. And this kind of goes back a little bit into what's going to happen if you were to get the grant. So we need to know exactly where you're at, which your financial data will tell you exactly where you're at. Do you have a lot of capital? Do you have a lot of investment? Do you have cash flow? Are you pre-revenue? Do you have a little bit of revenue going? What's going to happen to all those things if you get the grant? Tell us, I expect my revenue to go up by this amount after I implement the project, or I expect that my expenses are going to change by this amount after I implement the project, or this will allow me to draw new investment into the company. And this is what I think that looks like. So don't just attach your financials and never think about them, reference them, whatever. They are more than a checkbox on the application. They're of course important for a whole plethora of reasons, but I think the ones that we see that really excel are the ones who can kind of work it into where they're at. We do not evaluate any part of the financials for the scoring. So don't panic if you say, well, wow, I don't have a certain level of cash in the bank, or I don't have a certain level of revenue. That's okay. We don't have anything in this program that makes us say you have to have X in order to qualify. The only thing that we are asking or requiring is that net assets have to be less than $500,000. That number comes from the balance sheet. So, we've gotten a lot of feedback from folks. They just don't understand why we won't just take the income statement. One of the requirements to be eligible for the program is the net assets number, and that can only come from your balance sheet. So we cannot verify your eligibility if you do not provide us with that very important document. So the other question we get there a lot is, what's the difference between the balance sheet and the income statement? And what if you're not selling anything yet? So I'm going to actually address the second part of that question first, and then I think the first part will take us into our next slide. But if you're not selling anything yet, if you have taken steps to form your business, if you've incurred any expense in forming your business, if you have invested your own money into getting this business even a little bit formed, you should have a balance sheet and an income statement without question. So you might not have revenue yet, and that's okay. And, like I said, we're not evaluating you to say, do you have a minimum level of revenue? But you should have something put together to show us. And again, it goes back to showing us, where are you in the life cycle of your company? And if where you're at is you've invested a little bit of your own money and you've started incurring some expenses to get things up and running, perfectly fine. Those documents will show us exactly what's happening. So balance sheet and income statement. This is diving down into stuff that's a little bit more financial in nature, a little bit more technical. If you are struggling with this piece of it, we can connect you with resources to point you in the right direction. Do not assume that you can, if you have no accounting background knowledge whatsoever, please do not just assume that you can write down something on a piece of paper and call it good. We have an entire financial team that reads your application first, and they will be able to sniff it out very, very, very quickly. So a balance sheet is a snapshot of what your business owns. From a technical standpoint, it has to be assets equals liabilities plus equity. So it must balance when it comes in. Otherwise, we do not know that it is actually true and accurate. It's a snapshot of what your business owns and how you paid for it. So if you paid cash for a tractor, cash had to come from somewhere. We'll assume in this example that you invested your own money into the company. It's going to show that you own a tractor, and it's because of an owner's equity that tractor is into the company. So just a high level thing. Income statement is more so, I think, what people think about when we say financial statements, because that's definitely, we don't typically have a problem with the missing income statement. It's always the balance sheet that seems to be the hitch there. The income statement shows you what your revenue is and then shows it against the expenses incurred for that same period to show you, are you making money? Are you not making money? And this also can be known as the profit or loss statement. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to turn it over to Joy Hunt. Joy is one of the owners of Elite Feet in Middletown. They were one of our round 3 Edge Grant winners. I'm going to let her explain more about her business and their project. So Joy, take it away.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here this morning. I felt wonderfully blessed, fortunate, lucky to be a recipient. We put a lot of work into the grant, but as you can see, there's so much that goes into it. And my piece of advice right from the beginning is to not try to just get it complete, but to try to really compete and to win, because there is such a large field of applicants that will apply, and it is very competitive. You use the word Shark Tank, and I would absolutely say it's Shark Tank on paper. I was humbled with the entrepreneur friends who reached out to me after and said, "How did you do that?" Because there's so many little pieces along the way that you could miss. So you definitely want to be thorough and complete as a minimum, and then you certainly want to compete. In terms of really being able to compete, I would certainly say the rubric. Live and die by the rubric. It is a road guide. It is a roadmap. And if you're doing it, it will guide you to be very specific. If you kind of think of it as Shark Tank, or if you were the investor yourself, you would want to know that this is going to spark confidence, that you are going to be sure that the applying business is going to be viable over years to come, and that you really understand how they're going to use the grant. So as you can see, being very specific about how you're going to use it, and not just saying it's for equipment, but really saying what kind of equipment. Do you have a real quote from a real vendor about how much it's going to cost, what the production time will be required, the capacity time it may take to get up and running, expenses that are associated with that equipment as well. Jordan mentioned a lot about the market and the competition, and this was an area that we spent a lot of time in because we are experts in our field. I'm here in the store today, and our whole premise is that we put you in the best shoe for the best you. And that really defines us, but we needed to express who our competition was and how we were different. And it's important to do that with maybe how far your competitors are from you, how they interact with their customers that may be different than you, certainly demographic data. There's a lot of ways to think about it, but it really is important to be, again, specific and really substantiate what you're saying with third-party data. Maps would be great if you have the expertise to maybe drop those in and visually be able to help the evaluators really understand where you are and how you're different. Trade associations are great, even like potential partnerships, groups that it will allow you to now partner with, and maybe some data around that would be certainly great. And then regional business manager consult would be wonderful. I would say regional business manager really is able to help you get feedback specific to this grant. And I would say give it to someone else. School teachers are great with rubrics. So if you know a school teacher maybe that could look at it for you, but someone who's not overly familiar with your business to be able to look at your proposal and really say, does it walk through that basic slide that we saw earlier today? This is me now, who we are, what we do, what our capacity is, what our challenges are. But if I got the grant and used it specifically in this way, then I could achieve, these specifics and these outcomes. And it really does ask you, the other thing I will say that is important not to miss, it's in the rubric, but it really asks you to detail what the outcomes will be, specifics. Like, are you going to sell more widgets per week, resulting in this outcome? Are you now going to have the capacity to, add another piece of equipment and reach customers? Because that outcome is really important, particularly for this state. How are you going to use this money for the benefit of your business and ultimately for the state of Delaware? So those would be my recommendations, to make sure it's really clear that your proposal tells a story that meets the rubric, but also makes you memorable. And it's kind of easy to understand after it's all over, because you do want to stand out. There'll be hundreds of applications that will be complete, but really what makes yours stand out and be considered very viable for the panelists.
All right, thank you so much, Joy. We're so glad that you could join us today. So we do share some important updates on our social media, and I just wanted to do a quick plug for those. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also, if you have any questions and you want to shoot us a Facebook message, we're happy to answer questions that way as well. But these are our different handles for social media. So we would love if you could follow us and like us on all of the different social channels. We'll keep you updated as the EDGE process moves along. And we also share other funding opportunities that small businesses might be able to take advantage of, as well as some different information from our partners, different chambers, other organizations like the Small Business Development Center at UD, different things like that. So we just invite you to please follow us on social media to keep up on the different updates and information. I mentioned earlier that if you have specific questions related to your business that are more specific and not general questions about EDGE, we would invite you to send us an email to business@delaware.gov, or you can call our main line at the phone number listed 739-4271. And this presentation will be made available online. I also will send it out to all of the people who registered for the webinar so that everyone has it. And then the phone numbers are listed here for each regional business manager as well, or excuse me, the email addresses. So if you know your business is in Kent County and you want to shoot Laura Whistler an email, please go for it. We welcome you to do that. As Joy mentioned, the business managers are a huge asset for the businesses who are interested in applying for EDGE. Or if you have other questions about your business, if you have any issues you're dealing with that you just need some guidance on, the business managers are there to help you with this process and with other questions you might have. All right, so that concludes our presentation. So we've had a few questions in the Q&A. Many of them have been answered already. I'll just mention a couple of them in case they come up. One person asked, what was the match for the STEM section of the EDGE grant? It is a 3-to-1 match. So the business is required to put up $3 for each $1 of the grant. And more information is in the application for that question. We have a few questions that are open.
Jess, before you move on, I do want to point out, I believe I mistakenly said 2-to-1 earlier in the presentation and my math was correct. I was thinking 3-to-1, but just clarifying that it is 3-to-1 and the math was right. If you maximize the grant at $25,000, the business would be expected to put in $8,333 towards the project. So just wanted to highlight that in case, people are watching the recording and going back and saying, wait a minute, she said 2-to-1. It is 3-to-1.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. I'm going to let the business managers answer this question, whoever wants to jump in. Should the quotes that we collect from suppliers, et cetera, be attached to the proposal as long as it's under 20 pages?
You don't have to attach quotes, but if it's under 20 pages, you can pretty much put whatever you want in there.
All right, thanks, Joe. Fred Moss Jr., I hope I'm saying that right. Fred said, I never see individuals with disabilities own businesses getting grants. If any, how can the grant process be more inclusive of this population? So Fred, we actually had a winner in the last round. Her name's Vicki George. She owns Paragon Life and Fitness. She is an individual with a disability who owns the business. And she's actually opening a fitness center with equipment for individuals with disabilities. So she won $25,000 and was able to open that fitness center and get that going. But Fred, I would invite you to reach out to your regional business manager with your business idea or with your business name and information if you're interested in applying for EDGE or for other opportunities that might be there for individuals with disabilities owned businesses. So we have a question. What if your business just started in the last few months and you don't have all the financial aspects? So I'll invite Joe or another regional business manager to touch on this. Jordan did touch on this a little bit.
I mean, you will have financials. It may be a little thinner, but you'll have financials. If you spent money to purchase a business license, a computer, you're going to have financials.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. Does the money need to be put up front? I'm assuming that you mean the match, or later after the grant is awarded.
But yeah,
Yes, I can take this if you want. So after we have a fully executed grant agreement with the winners, the money is, you get the grant money up front, and then you have a year to spend it. And then you submit a report to us showing what you've spent of the grant money, and then showing your matching funds that have spent as well. So you don't have to spend the money, your matching funds up front. And we've also seen some where a portion of the project has already been completed with the applicant funding, so.
All right, we have a similar question. Can the 3-to-1 match by the owner have been invested prior to submitting the project? Regina?
Yes. So I think it depends, but we have seen where the person has already, spent some money on the project to begin with. We don't, I guess I'm hesitant because the grant funding should really be important to completing the project. So if you're, mostly done something, it's not really we're gonna go back and match what you've already spent. It should be something that you're looking to do.
Okay. Do we need to have an exact location in mind if part of our request for the grant is to move into a physical location? Also, what do we do if we don't know what the space will need?
remember, it's a competition, so the more specific you can be, the better, but technically, I guess you don't need to know.
Yeah, I agree with Joe that would be a little difficult to kind of rate the proposal if it's not very specific and clear. And then typically, I mean, I feel like the location would need to be decided on before the grant funds are released. I know we had an issue with a prior recipient with being held up with needing to find a location. So you do only have a year to spend the funding after it's released, so.
Okay. Does school and licensing count towards the financials?
I'm not sure I get the part about
You mean
school.
like in the match?
That's Aquisha Peer. Aquisha, you can reach out to us. We'll get you connected to your business manager to have questions, because I'm not sure based on the question.
Yeah, if that's about the match, we typically don't allow any like taxes or fees or anything to be included. The match should be specific to the project, and not really something that you would incur in normal business.
All right. We did have one question. Will a lesser awarded amount be considered if we do not meet the 3-to-1 match, but a stellar proposal is accepted?
Yes.
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 So it's up to
Mhm.
each category is the maximum, but we've awarded less than that depending on the project. And I would say too, to that, if you have a really specific, really strong proposal that is maybe $17,000, I would stick with that and not add in another 8,000 to kind of just get you to the ceiling, because it kind of dilutes your project a little bit. So if you have something that is specific and strong and less than 25,000, I would stick with what is related to that.
All right, Lakia Watson. Oh, we're actually answering her question by typing. Sorry. Can matching funds include time or effort from the owner if the project includes something that requires labor?
I'll answer this one. I'm sorry. I think we're all kind of like trying not to fall all over each other a little bit. the in-kind portion there would not be eligible as the match. We have typically not allowed that to happen, just because everybody values their time so differently. It's a very difficult thing to nail down. Actually, I think Joy has her hand raised. Joy, did you want to add something?
Thank you. I just realized I could have probably outlined our project a little bit better. It's probably a good example of how we leverage the match with our own investment. So we are a brick and mortar shoe store. However, we purchased a trailer for the purpose of doing a mobile store so that we could sell shoes on site at work sites, 5K races, instead of trying to just advertise and drive that traffic into our brick and mortar store in Middletown. And for us, we purchased the trailer, which represented just over $8,000, but we found ourselves in a really difficult position of being able to get the trailer on the road because we needed insurance, we needed additional employees, we needed to paint the inside, we needed to get the outside wrapped, we needed inventory so that we would not essentially rob our brick and mortar store of inventory, all the measurement tools, shelving, seating, all of those things we needed to be able to get the trailer on the road and to be truly used, we needed to do. So we did have our initial investment, but we were, marketing, all of those things, we still needed to be able to truly get it out on the road. And that's what represented our ask. So that's just one example, but I see there's a lot of questions about how do you balance that? And that for us was really our proposal was based around getting this actual trailer outfitted, stocked, manned, staffed, and on the road.
All right, great. Thanks, Joy. So we've answered most of the questions. If you have specific questions again about your business, please reach out to us at business@delaware.gov and just let us know your name and contact information, your business name and contact information, and where your business is located, and we can help set you up with your business manager. But it looks like most of the questions have been answered, and the ones that might be remaining are business specific questions. So if no one else has any questions, I think we can wrap it up. So thank you again to everyone who has joined us for today's webinar. The webinar will be posted on our website at business.delaware.gov. And we'll also be sharing the presentation as well with all of the attendees. So thank you again to everyone who was able to join in with the webinar. And we hope you found it helpful as you begin your EDGE grant application. Thank you.